Hey, After Legal Warriors, guess what? I have some opinions. After doing this job for more than 30 years on both the prosecutor side and the defense side, I have an opinion about what's broken about each part of the criminal justice system. I'm just going to tell it like it is, call it like I see it. If you're interested in this area of the law, stay tuned. This is the video for you. My name is Attorney Lance Fryrear. I'm a defense attorney in Lynnwood, Washington. My law firm's been defending people charged with crimes all throughout Washington State for more than 25 years. I'm putting out these videos to help educate the public. So if you find this useful, please like and please subscribe. More people get to see it. More people get the help they need. Now, guess what? I don't even know what I'm going to tell you because I don't script these things, but I do know what's broken in each part of the criminal justice system. I think the first thing, the big overarching thing that's broken is the goals of the criminal justice system, right? In my opinion, except for the most serious cases, the goals of the system should be to try to treat each defendant as a human, look at each case as a whole, and then try to find out what the right solution is for that case, right? And really good prosecutors, that's what they do. And you know, if you're a really good prosecutor watching this, you know you might practice restorative justice. You treat a hard case where it needs to be treated, strictly you do, in cases where it might break the law, but, let's be reasonable and not, affect the next 60 years of someone's life by being black and white. You know how to handle that too. But for the most part, the way, the law and order types out there think about things as criminal, bad, right? And there's no such thing as bad criminal. There's people that do really bad acts, okay? And we could say, well, what about the person that did this essay and what about the person that killed someone? Yeah, there's always going to be the outliers. But I'm talking about the large majority of cases are not bad people, criminals doing wrong. There's something that happened. There's one person's opinion about what happened, another person's opinion about what happened, and there's a reason why something happened. There's never an excuse to be, if we're accused of a crime, but almost always there's going to be an explanation, and a human explanation that needs to be considered by the system. But that's not written into the law, right? What's written in the law is if you do this, you get punished like that. And there's no gray. Law is black and white. So what's bad about the system is the legislatures have written the law as black and white, right? And that might be the best way they think they can do it. And the best they've done to help people is say it's the prosecutor's job to do justice, right? This general ethical rule, do justice. But when prosecutors don't provide the gray, the human part to the black and white of the law, that's when we get results that are unwarranted. That's when society suffers, and that's why we have big problems. And so why we have a great justice system, and it's one of the better ones out there, at least on paper. I think that's one of the big difficulties and flaws that I see in the system is that we're working towards randomly towards certain goals. If a client gets charged with a crime in the city of Kent, I'm just going to say it, in my opinion, those cases aren't treated with the same level of humanity that they might be if someone is charged with a crime in somewhere like Lynnwood. And that's my opinion. I'm entitled to it, and that's what I've experienced in doing this for many years. So I think that's number one. The second thing that I see broken in the system is the reliance on the police to make judgment calls that affect people's lives so greatly, okay? A police officer has a very hard job. Remember, I've been on both sides, right? 7 years prosecuting where I lived and breathed the police, right? That was my job. And then 25 years on the defense side where I can look at things maybe a little more objectively, right? But seeing both sides, I understand the hard job the police have, but think about it. How the system is broken is they get a call for some type of DV case and they show up, and depending on their level of energy, their executive function available, when they get off the shift, their prior, life traumas, right? They bring their own life experience and judgment to this situation where they're deciding oftentimes who to arrest. Oftentimes a DV case, both parties have pushed or shoved or have injuries, and the system has put them in this impossible situation. Officer, you decide who the primary aggressor is. You decide who goes to jail. You decide whose record is messed up. You decide who doesn't make it to work and loses their job or has a no contact order and faces stress and strife for the next 6 months, 12 months, years, right? Based upon not a reasoned, panel of people making a decision, just based upon, I'm making that arrest, I want to be out of here. And even worse in a mental health situation, right? In a mental health situation, the laws are such that an officer, I empathize with them, right? They're trying to get someone who is having a mental health crisis oftentimes out of the situation where they're going to harm others or harm themselves. And they're forced to hang a crime on them. Almost always hang a crime on them, find something to charge them with so we can take control of the situation right now, tonight. And while I understand why it's set up like that way, I think that's another way that things are broken, because the criminal system is not a place to fix mental health problems. And so those officers, I empathize for them. The system's broken because so much is on them that has such huge consequences to make charging decisions and stuff by arrest decisions right then and there. The system could be set up differently, right? It could be set up where they could do something to, if laws are written, they could remove someone from the situation and not have to charge them with the crime, right? I mean, the laws aren't static. They're written a certain way because it helps those in power. And when I can look on the outside, I get to see the consequences when officers make a bad decision, because I don't, yell at the officer. They're always going to make the best decision they can at the time with the limited facts they have, but oftentimes it's the wrong decision, and then the system gets left trying to mop it up, and we can only mop it up if we've got those good prosecutors that are trying to do the right thing versus just, I will convict you, you are bad, my officer says so, and you know who you are out there if you're one of those prosecutors. You know who you are. I think the third way the system is broken is when it comes to treatment, right? There's a profit thing involved, right? In other words, we live in a capitalist society. Profit makes sense, but people can run into problems, right? If you got health insurance, you're going to need to do a lot more treatment potentially than if you don't, because some treatment providers, in my opinion, may recommend more treatment for those who can afford to pay for treatment, because guess what? They need to keep paying the bills and keep the doors open, right? There's nothing objective about treatment recommendations, stuff like that. It's subjective. So it can work both ways, right? Defense attorneys can try to find the places that are going to be more client fair than others, but generally they're going to charge more money up front, right? And so because of the for-profit system the criminal system is in, as we know, people that have more are going to get more, right? They're going to get better outcomes than people that have less. And, I'm a private attorney. Why am I a private attorney? Well, I do better working in that area. I briefly, for a week or so, helped out a public defender, and I wasn't nearly as effective, right? Because I deal more with helping, getting people who want to listen to me and do the things to better their lives and better their cases and leave them better than we found them. But if you haven't been hired, oftentimes no one respects the public defender, right? You're a public pretender, you don't know what you're doing. So it's a different type of system. So the difference is the profit motives in the criminal justice system, both for treatment, for private jails, for how much probation is ordered so the courts can stay open, right? There's a whole, hidden thing going on. And while we don't live in a perfect society, we have to keep that in mind, because it's another way that the criminal justice system is broken. And obviously it could improve, but we'd want to have to invest the money to do so. And given that we can't even, fund parks and other things, and can't even fund the government as I'm going through this right now, it's probably pie in the sky to think that's going to get better anytime soon. I think the fourth and final way the criminal justice system is broken is the people in the system not realizing the effect a criminal conviction, even a minor one, has on the entire psyche and future of the person suffering the conviction, right? And oftentimes people in society want to scapegoat other, right? And it's so easy to call someone accused of a crime other, right? They're terrible, I'm law and order, that's a horrible person. Well, until that law and order person gets accused of a crime, well, now maybe they begin to develop that empathy to see that there's two sides of every story. But so many people that run the criminal justice system, police, prosecutors, some judges, but I think most judges have had experience, right, with clients ahead of time, sort of just ignore or pass off how damaging it can be to be accused of a crime or to be convicted of certain crimes. Well, you still be able to get work and stuff like that. How someone feels about themselves is totally different. It has other collateral effects that we can't predict. And so I think that the system should find a way to help people avoid convictions, because I think it's easier to hold people accountable in a way that they can answer for a now and not for the next 20 to 50 years, because we're not going to change how society thinks. We're not going to change how people scapegoat others. I'm not going to change that way to sort people or we're better than them type thing, where people who haven't been accused of crimes think that. Obviously, I don't, but that's how the system thinks. And so if I had a magic wand, and that's one of the questions we ask in a written interviews to get a job here, why do people commit crimes? And if you had a magic wand, what one thing would you change about the system? What I would change is finding a way for more people to be held accountable, better themselves, but avoid conviction because of oftentimes the way society thinks about that and the way the person accused of the crime thinks about themselves if they're now convicted. So, hopefully this makes sense. This is how I feel. This is what I think. And, if you need some help and you like what I think, how I feel free to reach out to our firm. If we get on board, listen to what happened, we'll identify a way forward. We will be there for you. Thank you.